What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking on the channel. So last time I shared with you the first letter that William Vincent Morrison sent to Brushy Bill Roberts, who's the old man who claimed to be Billy the Kid in 1950. So in that letter, Morrison reaches out, says, I've heard a lot about you from Frank Dalton, Joe Hines, and says, I'd like to come see you, and we have a lot in common, that kind of thing. He's been told by Frank Dalton at this point that Brushy Bill Roberts of Hico, Texas, is Billy the Kid. So he's going to try to reach out to this guy, find this guy, go see this guy, and see if it's true. So his first letter is in another video. Now, Brushy Bill writes back. Now, what most people don't know is, although Morrison did send the letter to Hico, Brushy Bill was not in Hico, Texas at the time. He had moved to Hamilton, Texas, and was living in Hamilton, Texas, and had for some time. But that's that. And now I want to share with you, and again, I'm sorry, but I have a copy here of the letter. This is Mr. Morrison's copy. It's my photocopy of a copy that he made from the original. I also have the handwritten version. But basically this letter from Brushy is April the 13th, 1949. And he sends it to Mr. Morrison. And he says, Dear friend, I will answer your letter I received this morning. I hope you'll find all is well. We are okay. He says, us Roberts is old timers here in Texas. My grandfather, he fought under Sam Houston in 1836 when they whipped the Mexicans out of here. My father, J.H. Roberts, commenced fighting the Indians in 1853. Brushy Bill Roberts commenced breaking up horse thieves in 1884. He's talking about himself, obviously. I knew Jesse James and Frank for 78 years. Now that's interesting to me because he talks about Jesse James and Frank James and says he knew him for 78 years. So we know that he was introduced to Morrison by Dalton, J. Frank Dalton, who claimed to be Jesse James in 1948. But he doesn't just mention J. Frank Dalton, he mentions Frank and Jesse, which makes sense, I guess. He said he knew the younger brothers too. Makes sense. The Youngers were affiliates of the James gang. Matter of fact, Cole Younger, when he got out of prison, I think it was 1916, maybe 1918, went to stay with Frank James, and they had a theater, I think in St. Louis, and Cole Younger was there. They had a Wild West show, et cetera, et cetera. So the Youngers and the James were definitely acquainted. He goes on to say, when they got wounded, they came to my father's house. No, he says when they got wounded, they came to my father's mother to doctor them up from a gun battle. That's back in 1870 when I was a boy. So you'll see this in Brushy's letters to Morrison. Like, he never claimed to be a member of the James gang. There's a lot of things that people say about Brushy that don't make any sense. One, if you just think about it. Two, they literally make it up. There's no evidence that Brushy ever said he was a member of the James gang. In these letters, privately, that he never expected us to be looking at, 70 plus years later, he very clearly says that my dad knew him. Now, in these letters, he doesn't know Morrison yet, right? He's not ready to come out as Billy the Kid. And he's not going to tell him a whole bunch of stuff. He's being friendly. One of his buddies, Dalton and Joe Hines, who do know who he is, referred this guy. And so he's a little curious, I think. This is just my opinion. And he wants to feel this guy out. Also, his wife is writing this for him. He's dictating it. His wife is writing it. And so, he doesn't want to tell her too much either. And so it's kind of an interesting thing to me, anyway, how he kind of explains things. But he's really bad on dates. Like, he'll just throw out dates. I don't think he really cared about dates. Matter of fact, one of the letters that he sends, which is in a series, so I know that it's in 1949. He writes 1944 on it, or she writes, I guess, 1944, which is just funny. So, or maybe she was the one messing up the dates. I don't know. But Brushy was not trying to come clean at this point. There's no reason. He didn't care. He's not trying to be a precision guy with these dates. So anyway, he says back in 1870, he run those horses up, let's see. Oh, he says it was back in 1870. So he says it was back in 1870 when he was a boy. He says, my father raised steel dust horses. They came there to get a fast horse to get away on. I ran those horses up back in 1870 on the prairie for them. So basically his dad said, hey, son, run these horses up. So he'd have been about 11 years old at that point, if he was, born in 1859, as he claimed. He says that he hired out for Belle Starr in Indian Territory. He says he knew all the James in outlaw territory. Of course, Belle Starr and Frank James and Jesse James, they were familiar with one another, and they came to her place there in Oklahoma. He says, I knew Sam Bass and Frank Jackson too. Now, who's Frank Jackson, right? So how would this guy who's a fraud, was he reading a bunch of books and picks out the name Frank Jackson? Very interesting. Well, actually, and this is the other thing. They say Morrison coached him. This is the first letter that he ever wrote to Morrison. He doesn't even know Morrison. He's never met Morrison. So where's the coaching? So this was very important to me. There is no coaching here. As this developed, it became a serious legal matter, but there's no coaching here. He says Sam Bass was killed in Round Rock, Texas in 78, which I don't even know if that's true. I can look it up. But most of the time his dates are off at this point in the game. He says he knew Billy the Kid. He was killed in New Mexico in 1878. Now, did he not remember when his buddy was killed? I mean, he may not have actually. He should have remembered that, 1878 was even before, the Battle of Lincoln and all that. He may have been trying to throw Morrison off. He may have been trying to act like an idiot. He may just not be good with dates. He may not really pay attention. It's not like today where we have a phone and we look at the calendar and we know exactly what day it is. I don't think they knew what day it was half the time except for the newspaper. But why would you, right? Why does it matter? if you're a cowboy out with horses and stuff for months at a time doing a cattle drive, like, do you really know what day it is or do you really care? Anyway, maybe they did. I don't know. He says he was a scout after the horse thieves in 1884. That's when I commenced to serve 10 years on the horse thief trail. He said he lost 30 horses holding them for breastworks. I was wounded during the 10 years. I thought I'd give a sketch of my life. I don't want this put in any magazine. So I'll say often they didn't want any publicity. People's like, oh, Brushy wanted publicity. He doesn't want any publicity. I don't want it put in any magazine, is what he says. I was the world's champion bronc rider in 1889 in Cheyenne. I've looked that up, obviously, and there's a guy, they have the name of that person, assuming it's accurate. I think there's actually a picture of that person. It doesn't look like Brushy, but he could be talking about a different, we used to have the National Basketball Association, the American Basketball Association. So I don't know if you were champion, is it the same? I don't know. But that does not line up. Again, he could just be laying a false trail for Morrison. I don't know. He said in 1889, my friend won 30,000. They gave me 10,000 for winning it for them. Now this is in Alias Billy the Kid. He talks about a similar situation. I don't know if this is the exact one, but you see these kind of same things coming back in the narrative here. He said he was 22 years old then. So he says in 1889 he was 22 years old. So that means he would have been born in obviously in 1867, right? Well, Oliver Roberts was born in 1879. So his dates are all over the place. So again, it's not like he's saying, I was born in 1879 and I was this year. It's not like he was Oliver Roberts. He was always giving bad dates for his birth. Always. Even from the very beginning, the first time he met Morrison. He says, I'll be 83 years old on my next birthday. Obviously, this is 1949. He would go on to claim that he was 90 years old. And so again, I just think he's throwing out crazy dates. He says he used to ride with Bill Cody, Wild West show. He used to ride with Pawnee Bill with the Wild West. That's interesting because Pawnee Bill went looking for Billy the Kid in the 1930s. That was in the newspapers. And so if Pawnee Bill knew that Billy the Kid was killed by Pat Garrett in 1881, why did he go out and try to find him, right? So, and whoever said that Billy the Kid rode for Pawnee Bill came way after. And so here's Brushy Bill Roberts in Hico, Texas, no internet, no nothing, talking about how he rode with Pawnee Bill. Again, this was in public. This is telling Morrison privately. So you see some things here that seem to connect. He says he put up money of his own money in 1895. He ran it for 25 years. During 50 years, I rode 3,000 bronc horses. I send you my picture so you can see how I look with my buckskin suit on. Now that's the famous picture of Brushy Bill that everybody sees, where he's got the fringe jacket. I will close, hoping to hear from you soon. I'm 5 feet 8 inches. I weigh 160 pounds. I get around like a man about 50 years old. I used to live in Hico. I live here in Hamilton, Texas, general delivery. They forwarded that letter to Hamilton, Texas to me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Write soon, your friend, Brushy Bill Roberts. So this is the first response from Brushy Bill Roberts to William Vincent Morrison. Morrison sent him a letter, introduced himself, said that you've been referred to me by your friends. I'm related to Pete Maxwell, through a distant ancestor. I know all about New Mexico. I know all about the Wild West. And I'd like to talk to you, like to meet you. And then Brushy writes back, says, yeah, I'm an old timer in the Western world. I knew all these people, Bell Star, Jesse James, Billy the Kid, Pawnee Bill, whatever. So he lists a lot of people. He doesn't come out and say, I'm Billy the Kid. He doesn't really highlight Billy the Kid. He just lists him along with a bunch of other people. And that's it. That's the first letter from Brushy Bill Roberts to William Vincent Morrison. So next, I'm going to tell you what happened next. Thanks for watching.
You a true song of Billy the Kid. I'll sing of some desperate deeds that he did way out in New Mexico long, long ago, when a man's only chance was his own 44.